Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. I appreciate everyone joining me for another week of the show. Hope you're all having a great start to your week. Hope work's treating you well, whatever you all do for work. Hope your jobs are treating you a little well this week. It's Tuesday, so you have a few more days, unfortunately. But hope everyone's doing well. Happy to bring you another episode. There's a lot to talk about here this week. Definitely some good content that we're going to be coming out with here. Red Sox, baseball, you name it. There's just a lot going on. It was a really dramatic 48 hours the last couple of days. So I'm excited to break it all down with you. I have a couple really cool guests on the show with me too. They host a Red Sox podcast, which they're going to talk a little bit about in here now in their intro. But I'm pleased to have them with me, Job and Charlie. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Thank you, Gabby. Charlie, how are you?
I'm doing great, Job. It's so nice to see you because I haven't seen your face in a couple of weeks.
It's been a couple of weeks. We're no longer on the same show, Gabby. We alternate now. So Charlie and I were lined up for the weekend show, and now I'm on the midweek show. So
oh wow, that's kind of sad. It must feel nice to be reunited again then.
Job and I are actually in the same state right now. So we actually made plans for, was it not next week or the week? Is it the week after that?
The week after that.
Yeah, week after that. Which is pretty cool because Job is in DC and we never know where he's at. It's usually a different room in a different city every time, which is always exciting. It's like spin the wheel with Job. But yeah, so a little bit about our podcast. So we are two of the 5 hosts for the Bastards of Boston Baseball. Bastards has gone through a couple of rebrandings. The most recent name before that was the Benny and the Bets podcast, but we have since transitioned into the Bastards, and it's been like this for a little while now. Job, as he mentioned, we were doing the weekend show together. Now Job is working with another one of our co-hosts. I'm working with another one of our co-hosts, and Terry, who's our founder, does both of them on the weekend and during the week. The show itself started back in 2017. And the current core has been here for the past couple of years. I remember when Job was interviewing, I remember actually getting to listen to his interview. I was muted and my video was not showing. And we both agreed that, you know, Job had a little bit of fire to him. He was definitely the baby of the group, but we were super excited to have him join us a couple of years ago. He's been nothing short of spectacular. Our podcast can be found. It's Bastards_Boston. And something that our fans never cease to forget is that we are unabashingly honest when it comes to when things are going great and when things are going dead wrong.
True. I can attest to this too, because I've seen even just from Twitter, some of the things that they've said, and also just from listening to the show, it's 100% true.
Yeah. One of the disclaimers that we put in, at times we may be savagely blunt. If we get smoked in a weekend, it's going to happen. But again, yeah, so Bastards_Boston. You can find me, Smith_MLB, and then Job.
You can find me at Job MLB, just Job MLB. Gabby, I make this joke every time I'm on a show, so I'm going to go ahead and do it.
I was waiting.
Charlie wants me to. Okay. Please don't send me any job applications. I do get like occasionally job applications sent to my Twitter. I don't read them. But if you have a good resume, I might forward it along. I really do enjoy it. And I like talking Red Sox with everybody, even though I am very brutally honest and I can be a pain on Twitter because I'll make statements and jokes that go over a lot of people's heads. People take me very literally. I'm not.
Yeah, that's the tough thing about Twitter. Sometimes people take things way too seriously, and it's like, this was not meant to be serious. Like, I'm a super sarcastic person too, and sometimes I'll make a sarcastic joke on Twitter, and people will get so mad. They'll be like, "No, but this," and I'm like, "Geez, like, don't take this so seriously. Like, I was just making a funny joke. Like, lighten up, dude."
That's how I felt this entire weekend. So we've got a lot to talk about today, but definitely most of my tweets this week were eye-rolling for a lot of people.
That's funny. Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys joining me on the show. Everyone definitely check out their podcast. They do a really good job covering the Red Sox, talking about all things going on with the team. So they said it where you can find them. So I definitely recommend checking it out. Really happy to have you guys representing your show and coming on here and talking to me. I mean, the trade deadline ended about, a little over an hour ago. So a lot went down really in the last 2 days overall in terms of this trade deadline. So there's a lot to definitely talk about when it comes to that and just our general thoughts on the whole thing. And we'll go into specifics on the moves the Red Sox did make. But what I want to start off with is just overall, I feel like, what the Red Sox did do overall, I think was a little bit unclear to people at first because it didn't seem like they were making a commitment in terms of either selling or buying at the deadline, which was a huge talk over the last couple of weeks of what were they going to do? Were they going to sell people? Were they going to try to invest in this current team to see if they can make a run? And it seems like they did a little bit of both. So I want to get you guys' thoughts on everything overall. But, obviously one of the biggest ones that really is upsetting some people is Christian Vázquez parting ways with the Red Sox. And going into the game last night, I was like, well, if he's in that lineup, this is going to be so incredibly awkward because he just walks across the hall to play for the Astros, who the Red Sox played last night. I think from that standpoint, those prospects the Red Sox got in return are pretty good. And I think that they don't pull the trigger on Vázquez had they not gotten that offer from the Astros. What are your initial thoughts on that whole Vázquez situation?
Well, I'm going to let Charlie go first because I'm looking at the lineup right now. It doesn't look like Christian Vázquez is in the lineup tonight against the Sox. Charlie, your thoughts on the trade?
It's probably for the best.
And Charlie's on mute. This happens once an episode, Gabby.
This happens all the time. It's because Job and I have a tendency to do that, like get on it, like jump on each other. So I have made this conscious decision. I will always be muted if I'm not talking. And sometimes I forget to unmute. So that's my bad. When Christian Vázquez ended up getting the move, he was on the field, was chatting with Xander Bogaerts, was notified that he was going to be traded to the Houston Astros, literally switching dugouts. I mean, literally the stitching on his name hadn't even been complete yet. And every reporter was there with a camera and a phone in his face. And you could just tell he did not know how to respond and how to feel or what to say, because less than 24, 48 hours before they said, we have a really good core team. I have nothing but faith in this team. I know we're heading in the right direction. Just tell us where we're going. And then he's gone. And as soon as that happened, it was like the domino effect. We literally thought Nasty Nate's going to go. JD's going to go. Probably Schreiber's going to go. A couple other pieces are going to go. But they'd also disclosed that we're going to add, we're going to sell. So not really just a sell team. The two players that we got in Emmanuel Valdez and Willier Abreu are two huge additions. I believe is their 12th and 21st prospect.
Valdez is good.
Valdez is good. Valdez is good.
And even Astros fans on Twitter were saying they feel like they got fleeced in the trade based on who they had to give up for a rental of Vázquez.
Oh,
right. And there's no question, right? There's no question about that. Vázquez also said he's leaving the door open to come back to Boston in 2023, which is amazing. I mean, nothing more than a dual slap to the face to Houston. Like,
he does not want to be there. It's so clear.
He doesn't want to be there. And I was curious to know if he was going to make a pinch hit appearance and what the response was going to be. Were people going to cry when they saw him? I admittedly did not think that he was going to be the first domino to fall. I will be the first one to say it. But I'm really excited to see what both of these young gentlemen can do. One is a speedster, one is not. One's hitting okay, and one I believe was hitting in the upper 280s, 290s.
One's hitting 370.
Oh, is it 370? Okay.
No, he's actually been cranking, and I think that's why Astros fans are so mad.
And that's great. And that's Valdez. Yeah. Valdez is going to be the guy who may be making an appearance in 2023, if that, but both of them will be up in 2024. That's my hope. It's going to be really interesting to see what else happened. Vázquez left. We end up bringing in another catcher, not even close to the same pedigree. This is the guy who had caught the 5th most games at for the Red Sox. So I will admit when it first happened, I was a little sad because now who do we have catching our guys?
Mm-hmm. And it's rare to find a catcher of his talent too.
Agreed. We were talking about it yesterday, the Bastard show last night. Do we put him in the top 10? I put him in the top 6, 7 as far as catchers in Major League Baseball. Okay. You have only a handful of other guys that I would trust. You know, you have the JT Realmutos out there. You have the Will Smiths out there. You've got Wilson Contreras, who shockingly did not move. And then Cincinnati has their catcher. Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. Cincinnati, I've drawn a blank on the Cincinnati catcher, but he's injured again. And then there aren't too many other names above Christian
Tucker
Vasquez.
Barnhart is the guy that you're thinking of.
No, there's another guy, Stevenson.
Yeah, but he's injured. Yeah,
he's injured again, right? So Vasquez has never been like a close to 290, 300 hitter, and he's actually doing that this year. He was one of the lone bright spots for Boston because we had so many black holes, glaring holes, where Job and I were constantly beating up on the Frenchie Corderos, the Bobby Dahlbecks, the players that literally got up to the dish and swung at 3 pitches out of the zone. It wasn't pretty. So admittedly so, the return makes the hurt a little bit less so. But Christian Vasquez, I don't think this is the last of him in Boston. So I'm not devastated that he's gone. I think he will end up coming back.
I agree with you. I mean, I think overall, this was in general implied that Vasquez would be a rental for Houston anyway, you know, to try to make that run this year. And if you think about the whole situation, if the Red Sox do end up getting Vasquez back in the offseason, then that's a total fleece of the Astros, because then they not only took a couple of prospects who definitely have a lot of potential, but have a chance to get one of the best catchers in baseball back anyway. And so I think overall, yeah, it's going to hurt seeing Vasquez in that Astros uniform. But, you know, I think if he comes back next year, or comes back in this offseason rather for next year, then I think at the end of the day, it's overall a pretty good trade by the Red Sox.
I think it's a good trade right now, Gabby. I'm going to be kind of brutal here towards Vasquez. I mean, yeah, he's been a part of some great Red Sox teams. He was drafted by Theo Epstein. I mean, he's been here a while, longest Red Sox player. I don't think that he's as good as Valdez will be. I think Valdez is very, very talented. He fills a need for the Sox moving forward as a utility guy. Red Sox fans who haven't seen him play, he's Brock Holt. I mean, that's who he reminds you of. He really is. He's Brock Holt.
I love it, Brock Holt.
And across AA and AAA this year, he's hitting 375 with a 410 OBP. He does have home runs in the 20s. And he's already at AAA. So there's a chance you see him September 1st when rosters expand in a month's time in Boston. And the way that people keep getting beat up here for the Sox down the stretch, you might see him sooner than that. I actually think this is a great trade for the Sox. They win this deal even if Vasquez walks away. The only way they don't win this deal is if Vasquez signs a deal for cheap money in Houston. And that's not going to happen. So as far as Vasquez goes, it's tough to see him go. I'm glad that Houston's not starting him against the Sox this weekend. That would have been tough to watch. But I do think we got the better end of this deal.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in general, this is a tough pill to swallow, right? For the fans and also for the players too, because we've seen players express that they're kind of upset with the whole situation. Xander Bogaerts in particular. I know JD might have said something too. And I think it's just because of how much Vasquez has been a part of with this organization and just going through the Red Sox system and really being here for as long as he has. And it's rare now to see players last, you know, a really long time in a certain system like that. And I think he's really special in terms of his impact that he has on the clubhouse for the Red Sox too. So I think it's a really hard pill for people to swallow. But at the same time, like you said before, Charlie, that possibility of him coming back here in the offseason is not off the table. He really could. That is a possibility. And I don't think it's something the Red Sox would rule out altogether. I think they might look into the option of re-signing him in the offseason next year. But I'm also with you, Job. I think that overall, based on what the return was, that would have been hard for the Red Sox to turn down.
Right. There's no way that wasn't going to, like, they're not going to hold off on that move. Vasquez, I also, like, we're talking about that trade, Job. You just mentioned that, you know, the only way we get hurt is if he signs a, low money deal in Houston. It's not going to happen. They're not going to do that to Martin Maldonado. And that's going to be something they're really taking into consideration, because I don't know how any catcher would feel or any player would feel if you bring in someone at a premier position, because catchers are not available everywhere. Good catchers are hard to find. Martin Maldonado is not better than Christian Vazquez. Vazquez is better than him. And he already has an established rapport with that entire rotation. And that rotation lost a couple people too. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Vazquez take on those newer guys that are going to be there, or whoever's going to be supplanting Jake Odorizzi, who left. So that's the major reason why I don't think that Christian Vazquez is going to re-sign in Houston, unless he has a ridiculous time in Houston. I still don't see it happening. I still think that he would be willing to take less money to come back to Boston, a place where he was loved, a place that he did well in, and a place that he excelled at, especially in 2022.
Yeah, and you could even see the look on his face. He literally looked like he was about to start crying. And that to me was the most powerful part of that whole thing, because that shows me how much he absolutely loves playing in Boston. And that is very, very telling. And I agree with you. I think even if he wins a World Series this year in Houston, which he might, and it just stinks that it's the Astros, because it's hard for me to root for a team like the Astros, but I would be happy for him personally if he won a ring this year. I would not be happy for the Astros. Let's just make that clear, everybody, before everyone kind of comes at me for that. But I would be happy for Christian Vazquez, the person, if he wins a World Series ring this year. And then decides to come back to Boston. I still think if they won the World Series this year, he wouldn't stay in Houston, because I think he's made it pretty apparent that he's really, really upset about not being in Boston anymore.
The catching market is such that he could sign elsewhere for probably a 5-year deal at age 31. Mm-hmm. Probably only gets 3 from Chaim Bloom. So he might not be back, but if he is back, fans will be very happy with that. I do also want to mention something that I think people are overlooking. Yeah, we got a catcher at this deadline too.
Yep, that's
he's a decent offensive catcher. For those who don't know, he did hit 255 last year, 310 OBP. And Reese Maguire, he's not as good as Vazquez, but it probably spells the end more so for Plawecki than for Vazquez's chances to come back, because Maguire's a backup catcher.
Yeah, I think Plawecki's time here is done. I think that they make a move and DFA Plawecki, which I'm not really upset about, to be honest with you, because he really just has not been productive here. And I think this is the type of situation where now them getting Maguire was in anticipation that, yes, they lost Vazquez, but they don't see Plawecki being a guy of the future either. And they are not comfortable with Plawecki being a starting catcher here.
Well, so Plawecki is Alex Cora's favorite clubhouse guy. He said that before on multiple different interviews. Like, Plawecki's his guy. I think that's the reason he's still here. He's a good clubhouse presence. But I do think there's something to be said for dropping Plawecki and giving either Hernandez or Connor Wong a shot at the big league level here. They're both in their mid-20s. Both have caught the majority of the pitchers that are now in Boston at some point in Pawtucket or now Worcester. And I think there's something to be said for that. There's a rapport there already. I think this team got better with these moves and not worse for 2022.
Yeah, just to second that, what Job just said, I don't think, and also what you said too, Gabby, as far as Plawecki's concerned with Reese Maguire, Maguire's had some off-field things go on that were kind of bizarre and just really weird. I just don't understand why somebody would do that, but I don't want to get into that again.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that's caused a lot of controversy over the last day, but
kind of dumb, just a dumb decision. And there have been a lot from some of the players that are now joining the Red Sox, but I know Job and I have differing opinions on one, which I'm sure we'll get to. But Reese Maguire is an upgrade for the backup. We still need to get, still need a primary catcher. Maguire has the same number of home runs this year and last year than he had in all of 2020, which is 1. So he's not here to crack home runs. It's not like Rob Rifsnyder, who's seeing a career resurgence. And I think he's done for the season now. We'll see what happens with that. But I'm curious to see what happens. It was a nice little upgrade, not a replacement, but it was a nice little upgrade.
Yeah, and even with that too, I mean, we can talk about that whole situation too, and just what they did really. I think getting rid of Diekman is huge. I think that is another thing that they did that I am very, very happy about, because he was very much a weak part of that bullpen. One thing I will say I am a little disappointed in with this trade deadline is that he didn't address the bullpen. I thought there was a chance in that last hour or so that he was going to come through with a pitcher to help in that bullpen. But now he sees that Matt Barnes is being activated, and I think he kind of feels like he didn't really need to address the bullpen, which I guess we'll hope that this doesn't backfire in Heimblum's face, because obviously Matt Barnes was not having a good season before he got injured. So I think that situation is going to be interesting, but I do think the whole Maguire-Diekman situation, I think getting rid of Diekman is a plus for this bullpen, to be honest with you, because he's had too many meltdowns this year for me to want to see him still in this bullpen.
Addition by subtraction.
Right.
You're absolutely right, Gabby. The team got better by removing him from the equation. I think this means more Schreiber. I think it means more innings for Houck. I'm okay with both in a lot of ways. I also think it might mean that we're expecting good things from James Paxton coming back.
Yeah, everyone forget he's on the team, even, which is funny.
Right. I mean, he hasn't pitched for the Red Sox. They have him for 2 years, $10 million, right? This is a $10 million flyer. But if his rehab wasn't going well, I don't think they do this. And I think they know that means he'll probably be ready around mid-August was the timeline we were given, somewhere around the 10th to the 15th of August. And if that's the case, he'll slot right into that spot. And you would have had to DFA somebody anyway, so you went and got a piece. I think you win that deal.
Yeah, I agree. I think we won that deal. Diekman was a lefty specialist. He hasn't given up a home run to a left-handed hitter all season long. Batters hitting 188 against him. At the beginning of the season, we weren't sure what we were getting with him. He struck out the side in New York, got his first save of the season in his second appearance. So we're like, wow, I guess he's our closer. And then 0 saves since then. He's just been like a master holder, and that's been it. But he's blown saves, and the Yankees have absolutely slapped him around. He got destroyed mid-July against New York. That was one of the 3 or 4 blow-ups he had.
Horrendous. Absolutely horrendous.
Horrendous. Like, we not only no longer have to worry about that, we're not worrying about a salary for 2023 either. Yep. And then with the addition of Maguire, you have someone who's under team control for the next couple of years, and by the end of it, he'll be 30, 31. So is he really going to be commanding crazy money? No.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's the whole thing that people are missing in this is, people were complaining about Maguire, like, how is he an upgrade from Vasquez? That's not the point of that move. He wasn't supposed to be an upgrade from Vasquez, nor were they planning on getting an upgrade from Vasquez. I think at the end of the day, if Houston hadn't offered what they did, Vasquez might still be here. I think it was just that offer was too hard to turn down. And then I think with Reese Maguire, it was like, okay, we have a chance to get rid of a weak link in this bullpen. Which is true. And we can, like you said, add to the catcher depth and improve, because he is a step up from Kevin Plawecki. And I just feel like I'm looking at that whole scenario and that trade as, this was a way to dump Diekman's contract and not have to worry about him for next year when he really has not been showing up and performing in Boston. That's what I'm really looking at that as.
Yeah. And the last piece of that is that Reese Maguire does one thing very, very well. He puts the ball in play, and he doesn't hit into double plays. It's like the one thing that Vasquez does is hit into double plays. I think last season he had 15, this season he had 7. Reese Maguire does not do that. He's the king of popping out to the infield, but he does not ground into double plays. So at least we got that going for him. He only has 1 this season.
That's so well said.
Appearances.
That's so well said, and that's so true. But yeah, no, I think there's definitely upside here. Nobody's asking him to be a Vasquez caliber catcher, but I think that we can look at the other side of that trade as a positive. And hopefully we got rid of a piece of the bullpen that really, really was, too many meltdowns in for us to all be happy with him. I think everybody was just over Diekman at this point, and I think that was something that made sense. Like I said, I still wish they got another pitcher, but we can kind of touch on that too. But yeah, overall, I'm not really complaining about that. I think they did what they had to do, and I'm surprised anybody wanted Diekman, to be honest with you, but hopefully he finds success elsewhere. It's just not going to be here. But yeah, and then the next move was kind of a little random to me. I wasn't really sure exactly where this move came from, but it does add a little bit of depth, which is Tommy Pham. He is somebody who has kind of been tossed around to a lot of different teams. And I do think there's a reason for that. And I'm a little bit concerned about that. However, that depth that he brings in the outfield, I feel like is important and is something that was necessary for this team. And, you know, especially with Kike and his situation and them just kind of throwing people in the outfield, and Duran, who, you know, is very hit or miss right now. Maybe not quite ready. Maybe not. We're still trying to figure him out. And then, you know, obviously Verdugo, you can move him over, which they are doing. It looks like as of now, they're going to move him over to right field. So, and then, you know, so I think from an outfield depth perspective, Tommy Pham makes sense, but I am interested a little bit in kind of that move in general, because we still don't know what's to come of that move still, you know, like there's still that question mark of that player to be named later, which Bloom seems to love, the players to be named later, and throws that into a lot of trades. So I'm curious your thoughts on that and what your initial reactions were to him coming here.
Well, I'll start with this one. I like the move a lot. I think Tommy Pham could be a problem for your organization if you don't have a strong clubhouse. I think that's why he's moved around to a couple of different teams. The other reason that he moves around to a bunch of different teams is because as a veteran bat at the deadline, he's useful. I mean, he hits 261, nothing to write home about, but that's his career average. He does have a top 10 MVP finish. He's not that player anymore from 2018, but he plays a decent outfield. He does not have a good arm, but he plays a decent outfield, and it means less Jackie Bradley Jr. in the lineup. So anytime I can get addition by subtraction with Jackie Bradley Jr. and Gabby, I have no idea what your thoughts are on Jackie Bradley Jr., but I am not a Jackie Bradley Jr. fan because I don't like strikeouts. And the one thing that Tommy Pham does not do is strike out a lot. So I am a very big fan of this move. We needed that depth, especially without, you know, Ref Schneider is now also going down. So it's just a matter of who's going to play. I mean, at this point, we really need healthy bats. But I like this move a lot. I think it makes the team better. Definitely not defensively, and Tommy Pham's definitely not Hunter Renfroe.
No,
but it's definitely a good.
He's also not JBJ defensively. Nobody is really, but
right.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to JBJ, I mean, yeah, that was when they traded Renfroe and JBJ was part of the return. That definitely was disappointing overall because it's like, yeah, JBJ's defense is better than Renfroe's defense. Renfroe's arm was fantastic. I mean, that guy had a gunner for an arm, but like he did make some significant errors back there that cost the Red Sox some games last year. And I think from a defensive standpoint, JBJ was an improvement, but obviously it was a significant downgrade offensively getting JBJ. And I actually thought that there was a chance JBJ was going to be moved at this deadline because I know the Phillies had expressed interest in him. And I thought there was a chance they would look into moving him. But, you know, JBJ, I still have a hard time really understanding exactly where Chaim came from with that trade. I think maybe he liked the prospects involved in that trade.
Like buying less.
Yeah, and so far he's not performing that great. I actually just saw him in Hartford this past weekend. I went to the game because I sang at the Hartford Yard Goats game, which is the Colorado Rockies AA affiliate. And they were playing the Portland Sea Dogs. So Benelis was there. He was okay. Nothing like super special, but obviously, you know, like he still has time. He's still young. There's still time for him to develop. But if those prospects from that trade don't pan out, that's going to look really, really bad on Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox for making that trade because Renfroe was key to that team last year. And he was one of the biggest reasons they got to the ALCS last year, in my opinion. So that is my opinion on JBJ and that whole situation. But you know, as far as Tommy Pham goes, I do still think it's an upgrade in terms of that outfield depth. And I think he's somebody who can provide value where he's needed. And like you said, yeah, JBJ is not going to be as much of an everyday guy anymore.
Yeah. So my opinion on Tommy Pham was not a colorful one. It was not happy. As someone who, you know, if you didn't have a strong clubhouse, you were bringing in a potential problem into the clubhouse. But Job actually informed me about actually a nice little conversation that he had with him and gave him, you know, what could have been 5 minutes turned into what, an hour?
Really?
Yeah, just about. I met Tommy Pham at a charity event and ended up talking baseball for about an hour when he really only had to be at the event, you know, for 5 minutes flat. So
that's cool.
I have personally, I like Tommy Pham as a person. That meant
telling.
a lot.
That's really telling when you have players like that who are willing to take the time to do that and talk to a fan like that for that long.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and it wasn't necessarily just talking baseball, right? So I thought that was awesome and very telling about him. But, you know, obviously everything you see in the media and everything that he's done this year can be concerning. So.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be joining my fantasy baseball or football league. I'm not trying to get slapped on or off camera. The Red Sox end up they're picking up the $2.1 million salary for the remainder of the year. There's a $500,000 trade assessment bonus associated to Tommy Pham as well. This guy's 34 years old. He's a two-time 2020 player, 20 homers, 20 stolen bases. So although I can't imagine him stealing a boatload of bases, the threat is still there, more there than it was with Jackie Bradley. And as you both mentioned, this is an upgrade in the outfield over Franchi playing out in right field or Jackie Bradley playing in right field. We were talking about
it's best for all of us if we part ways with Franchi now.
No more Franchi Cordero. It's like the best thing that's happened to the Red Sox since Jackie. You know.
I've been saying this for 2 years. This guy got the most ridiculous leash of all time.
It's like Rusney Castillo.
Rusney Castillo was just a sad puppy. Like that just didn't work out from the get-go. He had moments of brilliance and they lasted for about 8 seconds. But Tommy Pham is going to be somebody that reminds me, like, who is the most comparable player that came to my mind for Tom Pham?
Steve Pierce.
And the name that came to my mind was actually Willie Mopena. Coincidentally, it was a trade that the Red Sox had made. It was 16 or 15 years ago. The Red Sox traded Bronson Arroyo for Willie Mopena. 16 years ago, that was like a deal. What's up?
With the Reds.
With the Reds. And where did he play? The Reds. So coincidentally, we're dance partners once more. I think the player to be named later, we don't know who that's going to be. But I still am, at first, I was pretty upset. I was, excuse my French, PO'd.
It's okay.
I don't know if we swear. I was pissed. There we go. I was pissed. But after Job had said what he told me, I do want to change my tune a little bit because I think that's a class move by a ball player that doesn't necessarily have to give anybody 5 minutes. But I respect athletes, professional actors, anybody who gives a fan 5 seconds because you are famous. You are big because of us. That is how this works.
Yes.
That is why I have a little bit more respect for Tommy Pham. He will have a lot longer of a leash than Franchi or Bobby D have with me as far as I'm concerned, but that doesn't take much because as soon as they come up to the dish, I'm already boiling.
Oh, Gabby, you got Charlie fired up. This is great.
No, this is awesome. That was so good, but that's the type of guy you want on your team. That's somebody who you show really genuinely cares about the fans and is willing to take that time. And those are the types of guys that you like to see playing for your team, you know? And I think that that's really, and I mean, even somebody else who's like that plays for the Red Sox right now, I'd say is Alex Verdugo. You always see him constantly going up, like interacting with fans during games or like signing stuff. And I think like people like that, you want on your team, you know, and I think that that's really cool about Tommy Pham. And, you know, playing in Boston is a hard market to play in. You don't know who's going to pan out here and who's not. It's one of those really competitive markets with a lot of pressure. And I think for Pham, you know, I think maybe being here could give him a sense of confidence of, oh, I get to play in Boston and help them get a wild card spot and hopefully make a playoff run, you know, and I think from his standpoint, this should be an exciting opportunity for him to be able to play in Boston.
Well, he came up with St. Louis. And for those who don't know and just kind of see St. Louis as the Midwest, they're a baseball town. Like they sell out games left and right. And their fans
love the Cardinals out there.
Yeah, their fans care. So he's been exposed to that pressure. He came up the year after he made his debut in 2014, the year after they lost to the Sox in the World Series. He's definitely been in those environments before. He's also played for the Rays, so he's not a stranger to the American League East. He did spend 2 seasons with the Rays.
Yep.
And I think the Padres is a pretty tough environment to play in. I mean, obviously they made big moves today, but he did play a couple of seasons with the Padres as well. He's no stranger to big markets, but I'm excited to see him play at Fenway because it means less Franchy in the outfield. Another move they made today
means a win for everybody.
And in general, less strikeouts. And that's a really good thing, I think, for the product and for the fans. If you have less strikeouts and more action, the team is more fun to watch. I think the team got more engaging with these moves.
One more thing with Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham was actually traded in late 2019 by the Rays to the Padres for Hunter Renfroe.
I remember that.
Kind of funny. Yeah, that was something that I remember that move and I was like, interesting. Okay, let's see how this works out. And, it is what it is. So now he's here. Hunter Renfroe used to be here, and Hunter Renfroe gave us fits. And my hope is that if Tommy Pham doesn't stay for whatever reason, he doesn't give us fits like Hunter did.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point, though. And it's so ironic how much everything comes full circle from all of that at this point. And now we're looking at the aftermath of all of that and what happened in between then and where we are now. But yeah, I think personality wise, he's going to be good for this team. I think defensively, I mean, he's obviously not where Renfroe was at, but I think his bat is obviously an upgrade from JBJ, obviously an upgrade from Franchy. And I think overall, like, he's somebody who could contribute in the back of the lineup. Overall, I was a little confused. I was like, okay, I guess. But then I was like, when you think about it and you think about the outfield and what we were looking at, it kind of makes sense to get somebody like that. And, obviously he didn't cost that much, and Bloom loves those low cost moves of guys that could make an impact somewhere. And, overall, I think it's decent. I think I'm curious to see how he's going to perform here, but based on the fact that he was cheap, I can't really complain in general about this. I mean, obviously the whole player to be named later thing is interesting, but we'll find that out. Well, at some point, sure enough, we'll figure out who that is, but I'm sure it's not going to be somebody, like one of their top prospects or anything crazy like that. So overall, I'm okay with it. Those are my thoughts on that. But then today we got a move for a legitimate first baseman, a legitimate defensive first baseman, who, by the way, I did see a stat today, has a .354 batting average at Fenway Park. Also a huge important thing as well. Also went to the same high school as Casas, which is another important thing to keep in mind here too. Hosmer in the Padres. This whole thing, people were very conflicted on this move. I think based on what I saw on Twitter, there were people who didn't like it. They were like, he sucks, blah, blah, blah. Like, why are you getting a first baseman now when you have Casas who can come up soon? Like, what's the point in doing this? But at the end of the day, we have to remember we had Franchy Cordero and Bobby Dahlbeck being thrown out there to play first base, and the number of errors that those two guys have made at first base this year made it very, very apparent that if this team is serious about a playoff run, you want to get a competent first baseman who can actually play defense there. That was the biggest thing about him that I think is the biggest storyline with this trade, is he can actually play defense. He's a legitimate first baseman. And also, we don't want to rush Casas up. He's been injured this year. Like, we want to make sure that he's actually really ready to go before he comes up. And what happens if they feel like he can't come up till next season? And also the fact that they pretty much got Hosmer for free, because he's being paid through, like, literally until the league minimum. So, I mean, they literally pretty much got him for free, gave up one pitching prospect in Groom, which I'm actually okay with, and got a couple prospects as well in that trade. Like, this to me, actually, I think is such a win for the Red Sox right now.
It's incredible how much of a win it was, because they said they're going to pay a majority of it. It didn't feel like they were going to pay all of it and then interest. And that's what it felt like, because Eric Hosmer is making $13 million next year, $13 million the year after that, $13 million the year after that. That's $39 million. That gives us $5 million towards him this year. On top of that, we also got Max Ferguson, and then we got Corey Rozier, Rozier. Rozier, I was looking up his stats so far through A and high A. He's had six homers, 50 RBIs, hitting 221. He had 51 stolen bases in 64 games in single A. Clearly, the competition was not there, but only hitting 162 in high A. Corey Rozier, so far in high A, is hitting 263 with 6 homers, 37 RBIs, has 33 stolen bases. So both of these guys can run. I'm totally cool with this. And there was someone had posted, I don't remember who it was, so I do apologize. Jay Groom was someone who was going to be on that maybe 40, maybe not 40, and there was one person that had to go, so why not Jay Groom? I don't remember who it was that said that, but
that's interesting.
That mixed in with the fact that they're paying $44 million is incredible.
I was like, how does Chaim Bloom do this? This is so crazy.
It's insane. And I've given Chaim Bloom a boatload of garbage because we're falling apart. Injuries are happening. Injuries are part of the game, but I didn't feel like we were doing stuff quick enough. Like the Mariners early on, when they needed a first baseman, they got a guy in 2 seconds.
The Red Sox didn't address some of these issues as they were happening.
And that's the issue that I had. But, I mean, this is a huge, huge addition. I know Terry had mentioned that in the War Room. The War Room is the room that all 5 of the co-hosts share and yell and agree and all that stuff. But this is something that, I mean, is huge. And we're all thankful that we're getting it now and not at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, we're probably eating $25 million of this contract. Maybe more, who knows? It depends on what else is coming. So this is a statistical dream for us because I don't want to see Bobby Dahlbeck at first base.
Nobody does.
I'm done with Franchi at first base. Did I mention that I don't want to see either one of those two playing in the field or just playing at all anymore? Like, that's how much I want to see them. I don't. And so, sorry.
No, keep going. Keep going.
No, I mean, Hosmer's been someone that has been linked to Boston for years. Yes. It's like, oh, we might get Hosmer. Oh, 2 years later. Mitch Moreland with some swag. I mean, I think, Eric Two Bags could be a real thing. Hosmer statistically has done better in the second half of the year than over the first. But he rakes against right-handed pitching. Rakes. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter if you put him in the 2-hole, the 3-hole, the 4-hole. I'm not sure when Devers is coming back. Devers is supposed to be back. Is he back tonight? Okay, great. So Devers is back tonight. I'm curious
who knows about Story, though. That's the one that...
Dude, they revealed a fracture on that. The swelling was so bad. They got a second opinion. They found that out. I mean, as soon as you saw that pitch, though, it was like the Chris Sale one. The Chris Sale, you heard the crack. It was so bad.
Tommy Pham is in the lineup.
Great. Let's see him hit a home run, please. I mean,
I did actually see that. I saw that Pham was going to be in the lineup, but Hosmer not yet.
Hosmer probably still has to go through physical. If I had to point something out, Charlie, you mentioned that we'd probably be eating $25 million of his contract if we got him at the beginning of the year. I think if anything didn't happen today the way that it happened, we'd be eating big money on his contract.
100%.
The Padres
that's the whole thing, too. You knew once that whole Soto situation happened and him turning down the trade because he didn't want to go to the Nats, you knew that they wanted to get rid of him anyway. So I kind of figured, they're not going to ask for much. They're not going to ask for much for him. So if somebody swarms in and gets him, and Chaim Bloom saw the opportunity to do that, Chaim probably knew that they were not going to ask for much for him because at that point they just knew they wanted to get rid of him anyway. Right. And all of that stir was caused this morning with him having all that power because of the Soto situation and him turning down that trade. So then you knew that it wasn't going to be that much to get him.
Well, I love the fact that Eric Hosmer was like, no, I'm not going to Washington. Like, screw you. It's not happening. Kiss it. It's just no.
I think that's great.
I thought it was amazing. So
I sent a text at 1:37 p.m. to Charlie and Terry, both members of the show, that said that Hosmer's coming to Boston. And it just made too much sense. Like, the second that he decided that he wasn't going to the Nationals, it made too much sense to fill the void there. And I thought he was going to get a lottery ticket back.
Hello, like we can get it.
Like, we need a first baseman. We don't want to give anything up.
Like, let's do it.
I was concerned about the salary, which was the only part that I didn't think we would be. I thought we would have to eat some salary, the second we don't have to eat salary, this is a major win for the Red Sox. I mean, he's not the player that he was when he was with Kansas City. He's not the player that won, 5 Gold Gloves. He's not that guy anymore. But he's an everyday first baseman. And he's hitting 277. I mean, he doesn't have any power anymore, but 277. He's only got 55 strikeouts and almost 400 at-bats. This is a guy that you can put out there every day and not worry about as a defensive liability or an offensive liability. The other piece of that is he actually has reverse splits, right? I mean, he rakes on one side of the bat, but he could platoon with Casas when Casas is ready,
yes,
and not be in the way of that because he's also a lefty. There is room for him and Casas to both work together. You mentioned, Gabby, they went to the same high school. Like, I'm sure there's a conversation that's probably already happened between those two guys at some point in time.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really excited for that because I know that Eric Hosmer wants to win more than anything, but I also know that he's a pretty good hitter. He helps you now, and he probably helps you for the next year and a half because there's no guarantee that Casas is going to be ready to start next year and rake.
Nobody knows that right now. Like, it's so know. Yeah. And that's why people who are like, well, we have Casas, and I'm like, but you don't know how Casas is actually going to be when he comes up, and you don't want to rush him up. And also the JD situation, I think, is a factor in this too.
Absolutely.
Because say JD isn't here anymore and they have an empty spot at DH, like, I wouldn't hate the idea of trying Hosmer at DH and then having Casas play first base when he comes up. Like, that also opens up the opportunity for that too.
Right, or vice versa, where you have Casas DH until he kind of gets used to major league pitching, and then he can play first because Hosmer's a great first baseman defensively. It makes a lot of sense to kind of ease Casas in. You're not going full youth movement. I still think the Sox team is good enough to make the playoffs here. Some of the teams in front of us, I think we can catch Cleveland. That kind of thing. I hate this, Gabby. I don't know how much you listen to our show, right? But I'm the guy who hates Chaim Bloom. Like, that's my thing. That's my shtick. He won every deal that he made today. I still don't think they're quite good enough. I don't think he did enough, but he won every single deal today, and this one's a home run.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't really have complaints about anything he did. What I do want to ask you guys, though, because when they did get Hosmer, I thought that was going to preference another move to maybe flip Dahlbeck or JD or Nate. So in terms of the Nate and JD situation, I thought there was a good chance that one of those guys would have been gone. How surprised are you that those two are still here? And are you also surprised that they didn't try to make a trade for Dahlbeck, or do you think that they're just going to, get rid of him?
I think Dahlbeck, the value is just not there.
Yeah, it's not. Maybe it's somewhere else, just maybe not.
Yeah, Boston. I mean, it's like Chavis before him. It's like you wasted all his value, right, by like playing him into the ground against the wrong players. I know Charlie's a big Michael Chavis fan, but I also thought Nate was gone. I thought Nate was going to be a St. Louis Cardinal, and admittedly, and right up until Jordan Montgomery for the Yankees went to the Cardinals, I thought that was a possibility. As soon as Jordan Montgomery was dealt to the Cardinals, it felt like nobody else was in the market for a rental pitcher because everybody went and got their guy. Obviously, Rodon didn't move, but Luis Castillo moved for an absolute haul.
Oh, yeah. That was an overpay for him, by the way, I think, too.
A lot of overpay. And, I mean, a lot of teams made really big moves, but not a lot for rentals. Castillo has one more year on his deal.
And the Mariners, Soto too, it's like the Mariners are like, they're not even the best team in their division. Like, if they gave up a ton for a rental of Castillo for, the next year or so, but then if they don't win it all, like that's tough because they literally giving up 3 top 5 prospects is a lot.
It is, and they're going youth
when you're not even like a team that's one of the best in the AL right now. Like, yeah, do they have a chance? Sure, but I don't think that Castillo puts them over the top to the point where they're at the same level as where the Yankees and Astros are at right now.
Well, you got to think about it this way, Gabby, right? They haven't made the playoffs since 2001.
Yeah, exactly.
So their bar is a little different than our bar here in Boston.
It's so true. They just want to make the playoffs.
They just need to make the playoffs, and they're in the hunt. So they went out and got their guy. The Padres got, obviously, Juan Soto and Josh Bell. Josh Bell, great addition to that trade, but that trade's all about the best player on the East Coast until today.
And the Padres gave up. The Padres gave up a decent package for him too, but still not as much as I thought they were going to.
I agree.
I thought that what the Mariners gave up for Castillo was actually more than what the Padres gave up. And I still feel like that package that the Nationals could have gotten for him could have been better based on what the situation was.
I think they gave up all their leverage by telling teams that they had to move him, right? They could have moved him for a lot more 2 weeks ago if
it's so true.
Stories didn't come out right before the All-Star game that he was gone.
So true.
They're selling the team here in Washington. You know, my sister actually works for the team, Gabby, in marketing. I know she's devastated. She's like, oh, that's my guy. But I think from a talent standpoint, they did as much as they could, right? Mackenzie Gore is a good left-handed pitcher. He might have won Rookie of the Year if he didn't get hurt. C.J. Abrams is going to be a fantastic player. There's a couple other guys in that package that are going to be big league ready. So they went with the cheaper option because they're selling the team and they're looking for a new owner. New owner wants less on payroll. Rookies are cheaper. So it makes sense, but I thought they would have got more for him. But with all those, the blockbuster deals going on, it almost felt like nobody was going to empty their prospect package for Nate Eovaldi or JD Martinez because they were going after the really big fish. And if Juan Soto didn't move, then you probably don't have JD Martinez. He's probably a San Diego Padre.
So I want to say a couple things. First off, huge shocker that Juan Soto went out there. St. Louis, I think, was rumored to be the top team. They had a package surrounding, I think it was Nolan Gorman, who is the top pick that they wanted and they were going to get because he looks like he could be an absolute star. Los Angeles and all of California, like Southern California, have 5 of the most bankable stars in all of baseball. You have Mookie Betts in Los Angeles. Trey Turner's in there as well. Walker Buehler, not so much. Trevor Bauer will never be there ever again. You had Cody Bellinger. I don't know what happened to him. Freddie Freeman is there. The Padres have Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, and Juan Soto.
Yeah. And
they got Hader, who's I think the best closer in baseball next to Edwin Diaz.
Kind of shocked me too why they moved him, but
they gave him a boatload of picks to get him. They swapped closers and they gave him a couple other pieces too. And I think Hader not getting dealt a proper hand of justice here because he had a couple bad games. He's still elite. Like if Josh Hader's coming out of the pen, you're crying because it's like Edwin Diaz. You're just not going to have a good day.
2013 when he's on. I mean, he is
unstoppable. But better. Josh Hader is a better closer than Koji.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Insane. It's dumb.
Yeah. And that's why I was like, why would they trade him? Like, I'm so confused.
Makes sense.
As soon as that happened, that switched everything in my head. As soon as they went to get Hader, Soto's going to San Diego. You're not just going to get Hader and call it a day. Fernando Tatis isn't back yet. We don't know to what degree. He keeps getting into motorcycle accidents like an idiot. He needs to figure that out too. Like, I'm just being real. Like his immediate response when it happened was, which one? You moron. Why'd you open your mouth? Shut up. Stop talking. Like you sound like a complete buffoon. You just got a dumb number of money, like dumb millions. And your immediate response was, which one? Are you serious? It's like, did someone forget to pay the brain bill? You have over 300 million. You just and I like Fernando Tatis. And in our fantasy league that we have, so Job's a part of it, Terry's a part of it. I ended up trading Josh Bell and Noah Syndergaard for Houston Astros, and I hate the Astros. I can't stand them, but I like Kyle Tucker. And I was like, okay, Josh Bell's gone. He's got keeper value. Noah Syndergaard, he's gone. Both of those guys end up getting moved 3 days later. I thought that was hilarious. But we'll see what happens. I mean, if Tatis, Soto, and Machado are doing well, because Machado's been living up to his contract.
I mean, he's playing like an MVP.
He's playing like an MVP caliber third baseman. And now you have Soto in there too. And Soto's going to be batting second.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
That team's genuinely going to give the Dodgers a run for their money now, I think.
I think so too.
Agreed.
I was surprised to see, once they got Josh Hader, I thought that would be like a signal to St. Louis. Like, it's time to go get JD Martinez. It's time to go get Nate Eovaldi. That's why I thought St. Louis made so much sense.
I thought for sure the Cardinals and Red Sox would have made a trade at some point, like for one of those guys.
It just made so much sense, and it didn't happen. So confusing to me. But I'm very impressed with all the moves at this deadline. I don't feel like anybody lost. Big winners, obviously San Diego. I think Toronto's a big winner. under the radar winner, getting Whit Merrifield. I think he's an absolute stud.
That was that was announced like right at the end of the deadline too.
Like within 5 minutes, with 5 minutes to go, that one came out. I think that's a big win.
The Yankees did pretty well. They addressed a lot of what they need, unfortunately.
I think the Yankees are legitimately the best team in the American League. I think they're better than Houston. It's going to be fun to watch them lose in the first round of the wild card.
It is, and we're all going to laugh because that's pretty funny.
It's interesting to see how many teams dealt away. I thought the Orioles.
Yeah, what are the Orioles doing? Their closer is really good. They traded away their closer, and they're literally they were like 2.5 games out of that second wild card spot or something like that. So that's crazy to me that the Orioles were trying to sell players that actually could be part of that, when for the first time in a long time, the Orioles are actually like in contention right now.
And Trey Mancini as well, who's like the face of that organization. I know they have a youth movement going on.
Yeah, I was like, what is that about? Like, what are the Orioles confused me at this deadline for sure.
Yeah, there were some teams that won and some teams that didn't. The Rays didn't do too much.
Phillies, I thought, did pretty well.
I thought so too. I thought the Phillies might have been a partner for Nate Eovaldi. I really thought, Dave Dombrowski's gone and gotten Nate Eovaldi at every single stop along the way. He really likes Nate, obviously.
Yep.
And I also thought that it made sense. They have they don't necessarily have big prospects, but they have a lot of prospects at the AA level that would have made sense. I think the Red Sox made a couple of mistakes in that they didn't package some of those 40-man guys. We're going to have a roster crunch. We're going to lose some prospects that Chaim Bloom loves so much in the Rule 5 draft. But I'm looking for more consistency from this team going forward. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'd say consistency is the best way to describe it, because that's been the most frustrating thing. Obviously the injuries too, but just in general, like, I'm hoping last night's win sparked something in them. If they can take a series against the Astros, one of the best teams in the American League, that could be huge. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, this reminds me, I think by keeping Eovaldi and JD, that's sending a message that Bloom isn't ready to give up on this year's team yet. And I think that could be huge for momentum purposes in the clubhouse. And you even saw Alex Cora made a statement about how happy he is that they kept JD and just how much of a difference that might make. And I think last night everybody was upset because of Vasquez being moved. Understandably so. The guys in the clubhouse love Vasquez. And they might have thought at that point the Red Sox were going to be full sell mode. I wasn't sure. I was like, okay, well, this should be interesting. Like, let's see what happens here. But then I think keeping guys like that sends a message that Bloom still wants to see if this team can make a run this year. Because if he didn't feel confident at all in them and wasn't confident in the people coming back from injury, I think he would have done more of a sell and tried to get rid of some of those guys who are going to be free agents anyway. And I think that sends a message to the team.
I think definitely it does. And the last thing that he did to send a message to the team, I think, he did go out and get some help. I mean, Eric Hosmer is help. And a lot of people in baseball who, they only watch Sunday Night Baseball, right? They only ever see the Padres when it's like Padres-Dodgers.
Yeah,
they don't realize how good he is. And he's a solid player. He's very respected around the league. I think he did a lot to help the current team. Maybe not as much as some of the players wanted, looking at, JD Martinez's comments. But there's some confidence level there. I hope they get their swagger back here a little bit. And I maintain this, Gabby. I say this on every single show, so I'm going to drop it on your show as well. If Chaim Bloom just signs Rafi Devers to a massive deal, then everybody's okay. Like, I'm back on the Chaim Bloom
that needs
wagon.
to happen. That needs to be the first priority in the offseason, for sure.
Exactly. If you sign if Chaim Bloom signs Rafi Devers to a big deal, then I will buy a Chaim Bloom jersey. Until that point, I'm very much out on Chaim.
That's not happening. You're not buying a Chaim. No, not even if everybody gets re-signed. It's not happening. But honestly, this is like the one thing that's holding me back from saying that Chaim Bloom is doing everything possible to help Boston become a winner in the future. If you do not show Rafael Devers and the fans, more importantly, that you are serious about Devers, you do not find players like that every day. You do not find them every year. You may not find them for a decade. And if you do not re-sign him, this will be worse than not doing the right thing with Betts or John Lester.
So true.
It feels like Garcia Parra. It really does. It's like
Garcia Parra wanted out.
I know, but I mean, it feels like
Rafi has made it clear he wants to play in Boston.
Rafi is Garciaparra in '97. Like, you got to sign him. He's the best player that you're going to have in the entire generation of players.
Yeah, no, that would be such a big mistake by the Red Sox, and I feel like a lot of fans would get very, very discouraged and might stop watching if they don't do that, because that is, like you said, Charlie, that is such a generational type of talent that David Ortiz even said he saw some of himself in Devers, and that's the type of talent that if you let him go, that would be a huge mistake. And that's something that you need to prioritize in the offseason. And everybody else, okay, maybe figure something else out, maybe not. Devers is the one I'm looking at that needs to be the priority. Has to be. There's no other option. But overall, I'm looking at this deadline, and I think overall the Red Sox got better. I think the Red Sox are a better team today than they were 2 days ago.
I think so too, and I think they're better at all levels. I think they're better in the minors, and we're better at the big league level. So I'm very impressed with this deadline, even though I think things could have gone better.
I agree. I still don't think he quite did enough, especially from a pitching standpoint. But I think overall he got some solid return, and he did get players that make the team better. And I think people are in good spirits now that people like JD and Evaldi are still here.
Agreed.
But yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys hopping on here with me, joining the show. This was a lot of fun. It was actually that hour flew by.
For sure. I'm just looking at the time now. It said an hour. I thought it was maybe 45 minutes, 40 minutes, but yeah, it did fly. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. And it's great to, work with other great podcasts out here like yours. And yeah, I mean, go Red Sox. We're 1-0 so far. Let's see if we can make it 2.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, happy to join anytime, Gabby, and anyone who's looking for us on Twitter, you can find me once again, JOBMLB. You can find Charlie at Smith_MLB. We love to talk Red Sox, whether it's positive or negative, depends on the day. But please feel free to follow us, send me hate mail or whatever. I look forward to it.
Don't do that, but definitely check them out. They're great. Their show's great. They're very knowledgeable. Definitely recommend it. Always appreciate everybody checking out the show, and the constant support. Go Red Sox, like they said, and I will catch you all next time on Boston Bowling. Have a great rest of your night, everybody.